Ready for some home cooking? UTSA begins a stretch of 2 straight games in the friendly confines of the Alamo Dome. Roadrunners and Bobcats, it's time for the I-35 rivalry. Welcome to UTSA Football Insider. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll talk about the upcoming stretch for UTSA football, hear from Frank Wilson and Andy Everett, and talk a little bit about the fine art of punting. Plus, a look at the UTSA cheerleading team. But first, let's highlight a few of the notable performances from last week against Kansas State. Now, Cordell Grundy continues to show signs of improvement, and he led the 7-play, 50-yard drive, which resulted in the early touchdown to Halen Stewart. And speaking of Stewart, always good to see a fullback score a touchdown when they have that role that often goes under the radar and underappreciated. And it's just the second career touchdown for Stewart, and that first one came all the way back in 2015. And in the final minutes, the guy who had been waiting to break out, Greg Campbell Jr., finally got that long-awaited first career touchdown. So that stretch of 3 straight Power 5 teams to start the season is over. Now it's the final non-conference game of the year, the I-35 showdown against Texas State. The Bobcats are 1-2 entering this matchup, both losses coming on the road. That win against Texas Southern 2 weeks ago. And there is an air of familiarity between the teams, but it's also just the second trip to the Alamo Dome for the Bobcats, the first all the way back in 2012 when UTSA won 38-31. Oh, here's a little more on the Bobcats. Everett Withers came to Texas State after a couple of seasons at FCS James Madison, where he led the Dukes to an 18-7 mark in 2014 and 2015. But the Withers tenure at Texas State has gotten off to a slow start with back-to-back 2-10 seasons in 2016 and 2017. Now, the pieces are there this season, including the headliner on defense, Brian London II. The Bobcats linebacker led the team in tackles in consecutive seasons and has started every game since redshirting his first year on campus. London was also named a preseason all-conference selection this season for Texas State. But the key man to watch for isn't on defense, he's on offense. Sophomore Willie Jones III is the team's leading rusher and passer in Texas State's read option-based attack. However, Jones injured his ankle midway through the third quarter in the loss at South Alabama, and his backup, San Antonio native Tyler Vitt, threw just 2 passes. One of them was intercepted and returned back for a touchdown. And regardless of who takes snaps, the onus is on linebacker Les Maruo, especially with blocking schemes and runs that will be designed to go away from Josiah Tauaefa. Welcome inside our Coach's Corner, joined now by head coach Frank Wilson. Coach, let's talk a little bit about Kansas State and about this stretch, this very, very tough stretch to start the season. 3 Power 5 teams to start the year. When you saw the schedule, did you kind of think, hey, this was going to be a test for us?
Well, you know, I go back all the way to my first week on the job. I saw the schedule, really. And at that time, had a conversation with our then athletic director about it. But it was contracts that were signed. At one point, thought we'd be able to get out of one of the games to swap Kansas State for Kansas. But it didn't work out that way. And so it was the hand we were dealt with. And so we went forward and played to the best of our ability.
With this, then, Kansas State game, let's talk a little bit about it. We'll focus on some of the guys, though, who scored their first career touchdowns, like Greg Campbell Jr. How rewarding is that for you as a coach to see guys that grind and work and then get rewarded with a touchdown?
It's always gratifying to see a man reap what he sows, and those young men have worked extremely hard, diligently, to position themselves to be able to contribute to our team. To see them get in the end zone and have some type of resemblance of cash-in, if you will, for hard work that had been put in is certainly gratifying for them.
We've talked about Greg Campbell before on this show and how he is finally kind of taking advantage of his opportunity. What have you seen out of him, this eagerness now in his senior season?
A toughness, an eagerness, as you put, leadership, just willing to do, whether it's a punt return, kickoff return, a handoff, a screen, a down the field ball, everything that we need him to do, he's responding in the way that a leader does.
How do you think that road environment at Kansas State and at an Arizona State will prepare your team for the rest of the season going forward?
I think it's helpful. You know, those were 2 hostile environments where you had to go into a venue and deal with a crowd noise, a stadium capacity that was filled. And we relish it, to be honest. We look forward to going play in those venues. It's a part of the reasons why young men come to UTSA. And so certainly you'd like a different outcome, but those experiences will only allow us to be better in the future.
Back home now against Texas State, a game that kind of has been branded as a rivalry. I know fans like to get into it, maybe players build into it a little bit, but when it comes down to it, as a staff, how do you prepare for a game that might be a little more hype for everyone else?
The same way. Our approach doesn't change. They're a quality football team that we respect. Certainly, they're our neighbors within an hour driving range of one another. In a game that at one point was 14-17 in the second quarter a year ago, a lot more competitive than what the score indicated at the back end of it. So we're expecting the very best from this Texas State team that's much improved from a year ago.
With a team like this coming into your house now, is there something that you can kind of focus on the aggressiveness again, your defense, your offense, about capturing the crowd and how you guys did against Baylor to start out that game?
Yeah, I think against Baylor, in every week we try to do us, to be the best that we can be, to be the best UTSA football team that's on the field. We'll do the same this week. We'll do the things that are fundamentally sound, that allows us to play the technique, to play the skill set required to defeat the opponent that's across from us.
This UTSA defense, already one of the best in Conference USA, tackles for loss now. Is that a reflection of what you want to see out of that front seven?
Yeah, it is. The next step is to create some turnovers. We started off slow in week one and gave up chunks of yards. I've reduced that tremendously. Started off slow from an offensive standpoint, gave up X amount of sacks, have cut that nearly to almost non-existent. The one sack of this past week was an unintentional grounding that was called intentional grounding. In reality, we had a slip screen going and there was a receiver there. So it hit an offensive lineman, so they called it a sack. But we've taken away some of those things that hindered us early on. And those are the hidden things that people don't see necessarily, but where we're making strides and we're improving at as well.
Well, it should be a good one coming up. It's in the Alamo Dome Saturday night. Coach, as always, thank you. We appreciate the time, and I think we better get this down right here. So, all right. Oh, we didn't do the fist pound here. Let's do it. Now, coming up next, the guy who you hope to rarely see on the field, but when he's out there, good things usually happen. The special team sit-down with Yannis Routsas up next. Welcome back to UTSA Football Insider. Special teams are a critical aspect of any football program, and the Roadrunners have had the benefit of productive specialists in the kicking game, led by senior punter Yannis Routsas. But for any team, you don't want to see your punter on the field too much. So here's how Routsas stays motivated and game ready during those long periods standing on the sideline.
I know my place on the team. I know that I have to punt at certain times and I need to go hold for our kicker, but just having the love for the game and just being able to develop that skill each and every day and be able to just be the best I can at it. So I enjoy it. So
when you run in though and you're going to punt, you're coming in cold. You know,
right.
You've warmed up and you've punted, but then you might not have punted for 20 minutes of game action or longer. Right. How do you get in there and you really don't have time to warm up?
Right. Some games, you know, you might get 4 kicks, 10 kicks, but it's like, I think it's just being able to be warm within that whole time period. Just making sure I'm keeping my focus. I think that's the biggest thing, because it all becomes mental throughout the whole game. It just mental reps, and eventually it just, when you go out there, just the mental part just takes over. So.
And you're involved in 2 particular plays where people are just charging at you. So when you're holding or when you're punting, well, first of all, what's more stressful?
Definitely the punting part.
Yeah.
Definitely the punting part, because you're actually sitting there looking at them, and with the holding, I'm just looking at my deep snapper the whole time. So when you know, with punting, you're just sitting back there and you see guys and you know there's a rush coming, but if you're just working on your operation time throughout, then there's nothing to be worried about. So.
With punting, you know, most people might not know the intricacies of how you become a better punter. So how do you get your legs stronger? How do you get more height and more distance on those punts?
Definitely just with my trainers, just working on shorter steps, working on my drop, there's several different drills I do every single day that just work that just helped me develop a bigger hang time, a bigger distance, and just doing those consistently throughout, just trusting the process, it helps with that along the way. So.
And then when you're going to, coffin corner, directionally punt, what do you change when you get back and have your approach there?
They always say that punting is it's a straight line. So if I'm punting to the right, I literally have to just pre-snap. My hips are already aligned to that direction, so I'm just catching and pivoting my upper body towards that direction, and everything just becomes mental again. It's the same thing, just a straight line everywhere I go. So
when you're holding, how important is it to have that good communication and the good relationship with your deep snapper?
It's a huge relationship, because we just have to be on the same page depending on the call, and just being able to signal him and being able to making sure he understands and being where I'm at, and we always have that connection just throughout practice the whole time, because he snaps me for punt and he snaps me for field goal, so our relationship is pretty tight. As a punter, not to say how do you promote yourself, but how do you kind of get more attention? Because you're a senior. How do you get to that next level and say, look, this is what I'm capable of, and showcase really what you can do? Definitely just the stat. I feel like the stats, that's where it comes from. It's just being able to pin them inside the 20, being able to net average a certain distance, and being able to making sure they fair catch their balls, and the things just stack up over and over. So I feel like that's where it all comes from. As a senior, this senior class has seen the high of getting to that bowl game for the first time, and then also probably the frustration of getting 6 wins but being left out last year. Definitely. So with all of that, what do you want your legacy and your final push as a class to be this year? Definitely the conference championship, and definitely a bowl game. So definitely just to win the bowl game, and hopefully if we make the championship, to win that as well. So being able just to leave that for them for the next class, and having them to just work off of that and be that much more motivated to be able to experience that and be able to know how that feels and be able to push for those goals. So. Now he's been consistent once again. The 2017 Ray Guy semifinalist enters the week with a season average of nearly 43 yards per punt, and he booted a 63-yarder against Baylor. But if you don't see the punter on the field a lot, it could mean drives are ending in points. And Valerie Lopez shows us how the Roadrunners would celebrate those points in the latest edition of Off the Gridiron.
If you were to score a touchdown, what would your touchdown dance be?
Ooh. Probably just shoot. Yeah.
All right, just say it. Or are you going to dance, or how would you do it? Show the fans what you got.
I want to go shoot. I'm not a dancer, so I'm probably just going to go celebrate with the team.
I probably just should go celebrate with the O-line or something. I can't dance. I can't dance.
I don't know. If I'm scoring a touchdown, it's real good for the defense. So I'm probably going to just be getting mauled by the defense.
What's the thing all the kids are doing now? You got to do it with me.
The hooks.
Oh, can you show the fans what that is? What's it called?
That one. I don't know.
There it goes.
I'll just score a touchdown. I'd probably just throw the ball to the ref. I don't like dancing.
No?
No.
No touchdown dances for me, but up next, the voice of UTSA football, Andy Everett, joins us to recap the Kansas State game and preview the Bobcats Roadrunners matchup. Welcome back to UTSA Football Insider. If you haven't already, get your tickets for the rest of this season at goutsa.com/tickets. There you'll find your go-to source for single game tickets, season tickets, plus a mini plan option. It's everything you need to know about how to make your game day experience at the Alamo Dome an enjoyable one. 2 straight home games coming up for UTSA beginning Saturday night at 6 o'clock. Andy Everett, the radio voice of the Roadrunners, joins us now for what has become a pretty nice weekly segment, and now we have some home football to talk about for a little bit before we get into that Texas State matchup. Your takeaway from a pretty good Kansas State team?
Well, the turning point of the game was obviously late in the second quarter. I thought UTSA had kind of found themselves a little bit. They tied the game. The crowd was a little bit restless. Then it became 10-7. Then it became 17-7, and you're still right there. And then a bad punt return, a turnover on the next offensive series, and all of a sudden you're down 20 points. And that really got them behind the 8 ball to end the second quarter, and they never really got any good momentum going in the third quarter. I do think that they should be very proud of themselves because they did get to play, even though it was second and third teamers in the second half that were playing for Kansas State a lot, some first teamers. They did go out there and score a couple of touchdowns, get some points or field goal and a touchdown, get some rhythm going against somebody other than themselves.
Having been through a couple of these road games now this year, at Arizona State and at Kansas State, from your perspective, how much of a factor is that road crowd?
Well, I think the players for UTSA thrive in that capacity, in that area, in that arena. I think they love it, and I think they would. They love playing in front of 41,000, 42,000 at the Alamo Dome for the Baylor game. When you get that many people in there, it creates a buzz and excitement that only college football can bring. And whether it's Arizona State or last year Baylor, or in the future wherever they go, Texas A&M is going to be on the schedule down the road. They love playing in those kind of stadiums, and I don't think they get intimidated by it. That doesn't seem to have that effect. I don't think football has the same intimidation factor as, say, basketball does from an arena standpoint. I think the players really enjoy it and hope that they get a lot of that at home.
And yeah, how big will that be then this week in a game against Texas State, where both fan bases have really kind of bought into this branded rivalry idea behind the game?
Well, it's been a rivalry in other sports forever. It's only been a rivalry in football for 2 games. And it just hasn't worked out to where you can schedule it every year like you do basketball, or when they were conference opponents years ago in the Southland, and even for 1 year in the WAC, where you can play each other all the time. And I think when you play each other all the time, that's what really makes it a rivalry. What makes the football rivalry is there's a lot of students that were recruited by both schools. There's a lot of friends at each other's campuses that don't play sports but go to the games. And so there's that kind of rivalry, and just the fact that it's UTSA and Texas State, and it's always been something in other sports, it's morphing into that in football. And as this rivalry goes further, it'll be even bigger, I think, as this game's played more often. Right now, though, it's just a game on the schedule that really both teams need to win because both are off to a slow start, wins and losses.
How important will this be for UTSA as the final game before conference play
Well,
begins?
this gives them a big boost if they can win this game. And if they can get off to a good start, I think they'll have a good chance to do that. The pressure is clearly on UTSA. This is a game that UTSA, I think, should win. Now, Texas State's probably saying they should win, but if we go in there and beat them, that'll really help our schedule and move us forward going into the rest of the Sun Belt Conference. And I think UTSA is thinking the same way. If we can come off these last 3 games knowing that we've played the best teams we're going to play all year long and take what we learned from those games into Texas State, they should be in good shape.
Radio voice of the Roadrunners, Andy Everett. Andy, thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
A barrage of touchdowns for UTSA last year against Texas State. We'll look back at that game, plus hear from the most spirited squad on campus when UTSA Football Insider returns. Welcome back to UTSA Football Insider. Last week, we mentioned it was a big opportunity for Conference USA in a few matchups against Power 5 programs. Now, one of those games didn't occur. Marshall and South Carolina was canceled due to Hurricane Florence, but another one led to what might be the craziest play of the college football season. North Texas stormed into Fayetteville and came away a 44-17 winner at Arkansas. Now, the Mean Green might not have needed the momentum-changing play that occurred midway through the first quarter, but it certainly didn't hurt. Keegan Brewer's fake fair catch on a punt return now also makes him a frontrunner for the 2019 Academy Award for Best Actor after lulling the Razorbacks to sleep on the punt coverage. North Texas now heads to Liberty this week. But there is one conference game to kick off the CUSA schedule. Southern Miss had a road game at Appalachian State canceled last week, so the Golden Eagles had an extra week to prepare for Rice. Now, the Owls have lost 2 straight after an opening night win over Prairie View A&M, and UTSA will play both of these schools on the road in October. And for UTSA, it was about this time last year, September 23rd instead of September 22nd, when the Roadrunners headed up to San Marcos to face the Bobcats. A lot of offense, some fun on defense. It all went right on that night. Here's a look back at the Roadrunners' 2017 win. Now, the football team always brings the intensity, but it might be a stretch to call them the loudest team on the sideline. Well, that's because this team has megaphones and is trained in the art of yelling. Here's Valerie Lopez with a look at the UTSA cheer squad.
You see them on the sidelines at every home game during volleyball, football, and basketball season. But you might not know about their time commitment when it comes to preparing for the year. For the UTSA cheer teams, there is no off season.
It's a lot of work, but it's very worth it. We have practice 3 to 4 times a week. We have weights 2 to 3 times a week. We have appearances that we have to do. We each have to have 40 hours a year of appearances. And then cheering at football, basketball, volleyball on the weekends, sometimes the weekdays if they play on a Tuesday. So it's very busy, but it's so much fun.
So game days, we get to the Alamo Dome approximately 5 hours before kickoff, no matter what that time will be. So we're probably here about 5.5 to 6 hours before kickoff. We go to the Alamo Dome and we do an alumni tailgate. We go all around the Alamo Dome and just kind of vibe with fans and stuff. And then we warm up and we actually do the game.
So the difference between all-girl and co-ed basically is, well, for one, the boys, what we do is that we usually have 1 to 2 people under each female versus all-girl. They have about 4 people under each flyer.
It's like a full-time job, easily between practices, appearances, workouts, strength and conditioning.
You want to be a collegiate cheerleader, so it motivates you. Like, I know I cannot, still cheer in college if I let my grades drop. So it's always been a dream of mine to cheer at the D1 collegiate level. Meeting the people you meet, the connections you make, the memories you make, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And that seems like the perfect way to end this show. Get everyone all fired up heading into game day. As always, thanks to Valerie Lopez, as well as everyone else who makes this show possible. UTSA and Texas State, Saturday night at 6 o'clock. Thanks for watching. We'll see you at the Alamo Dome.